think. I'm not going to swear to it. But I believe that I am streaming now. Okay. Yeah. A little bit of a snafu there. How's it going, Commander? I had logged off on the weekend to be part of Founders and Legends, and apparently I needed a code to log back in. Chuck's not with us, so the code went to him, and there you go. How's it going, Geek Preacher, Bloodwild? Lord mercy. Can't hear you. Maybe it's me. Tim cannot hear me. Can you all hear me? Shit, this thing's going to be turned off, too. Got to set something on fire. I can hear you. Okay, very clear. All right. No, it's just you, Tim. It's just you. I discovered in that Founders and Legends game that I did, I had it set to a different microphone, and nothing was actually working correctly. Well, if it's low, let me see what audio. Where the heck do I see? Oh, I just messed it up. Where do I see what microphone I'm using? Is default. Let's do that. Apply and okay. Alright, is that any better? Hopefully I didn't just turn it off. How's it going, Epi? I'm still using this older, what is this thing, this Snowball until my new mic gets in. I had bought the wrong one. Chuck had sent me something, blah, blah, blah. Bought the wrong one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it actually was a lot of fun. Bloodwild, that was a really cool game. You know, it's I think we did it on Zoom, is what we used, and Luke ran a pretty tight, pretty tight ship. You could tell there was a lot of people wanting to go to the left and right, and get off mission a little bit. But you know, you got 3 hours, and in that kind of circumstance, it's not like an online game. They had another game starting at 2 or something whenever ours ended. So we couldn't really go over. So in the last couple of minutes, I know we wrapped it up, but he had a pretty tight ship running there, which is good. How's it going, Snow Quilter? Jennifer, how are you doing? Whatever you've done now is better. There was a slight background crackle in the past. Yeah, I think what I keep doing is forgetting to, when I switch this stuff over, blah, 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 I don't tell it to speak to the Snowball. I'm still trying to speak through the Anchor, whatever speaker thing I've got over. I have no idea, but I just got to get to where I switch it to the appropriate device. Hopefully it's on back order, but hopefully the mic with the little boomstick and all that stuff, we'll get that back in, and then Chuck can walk me through fixing. And I had ordered a cheap knockoff as opposed to the one he wanted made too, so we couldn't do any adjustments on it. So we sent that one back. Speaking of which, I don't know if I got refunded for that. We sent that one back, and we got another one coming. So, and it's on back order like everything else. Everything's on back order, and it's probably going to get a whole lot worse as the rift between China and the United States picks up a little bit of speed. And I think the United Kingdom has joined into the fracas as they are trying to assist the peoples of Hong Kong. But my guess is we're going to see a little bit more, a continuing problem with supply and demand until manufacturers move or other things occur. Well, this is Ask Me Anything, Geek Preacher, so fire away before I start wandering off on some kind of political tangent, as I am wont to do. I noticed today that the Egyptian parliament voted to send troops across the border into Libya, where Turkey already has. So we got a war brewing there, maybe not, and who knows. But it's a very interesting world beyond our doors. How's it going, Retro Gamer? But we are here for Ask Me Anything, so fire away. I'm tired of dark gaming setting. The world is too damn dark. You know, it's funny you should say that, because I suspect strongly that in the Middle Ages, when knights were fighting from horseback, and you know, whether it's in the east or in the west or, you know, Arabia or wherever, that most of the battles were fought in the clear light of the bright sun with the blue skies. I suspect fighting in the rain and the snow was disagreeable to heavy armor and equipment and all of that. so that all the darkness that, you know, Sauron casts over Minas Tirith probably wasn't the norm in the when the French and the English fought over Normandy. So I'm looking for a setting that is on the way up. Well, I'm not sure. I can't speak to many settings. I use Erd, of course, all the time. And Erd is, I would not describe Erd as a dark setting at all. In fact, it's a world reborn. The darkness has been thrown out 90 years previous. You purchase the book right now, the way the timeline is set up, 90 years previous. The dark god, Unklar, the horned god, was thrown out. The sun returned to the earth. Evil was driven to the far corners of the world, and all of these young kingdoms sprang up in the ruins of Unklar's, empire. And then it's your world go. So, yeah, you set me up really nice. Thank you. And then it goes. So if you want the world to be dark and, you know, cloudy or whatever, you certainly can do that with Erd, but I don't. The world is, Kael'mar is much like, when I envision Kael'mar in my head, it's like, who's the king? King Arthur's England, you know, that type of stuff. And when I see Angoulême literally is built off of medieval France, about the year 1100 or so. And then Tegia has got a Spartan influence, and Brindisium a Roman influence. So all kinds of stuff. But the world itself is as you want it to be, which is one of the things we really, when I wrote it and when we put it together, we wanted everyone who can pick it up to kind of adjust it. If you want the world to be dark and gloomy, with a constant gloam cast over it, then you certainly can. I don't think I use that word right, gloam. Gloam is a great word, but I think I misused it there. But you certainly can. You can do whatever you want with it, because it's your setting once you roll with it. I don't tend to do that, but a world on the verge, that's exactly what Erd is. It can go either way. The kingdoms are so young and so new that they can easily fall to, you know, an overlord or what have you. Or if your heroes are bold and heroic enough, they can seize the day and carry good and into the future. Very personal question that you can tell me if I'm being too noisy. You are a history guy. Davis is an archaeologist. Do you think your upbringing influenced these interests? If so, how did these same influences also lead to your fantasy gaming? You know, I don't know. My dad always had a huge interest in history, but he was an officer in the Army, Vietnam veteran, and, I mean, he was career military, so we grew up on Army posts, and we were surrounded with military, you know, our whole lives. And Dad talked politics some, not a lot. There was a lot of history conversations rolling around, but nothing that, I mean, my dad and I, when we were little, didn't sit down and discuss history. I think that there was this ambiance of something other than in all of our youths. You know, there's four of us. There's my oldest brother Zane, then Davis, then me, then my sister Nikki. And Zane and Nikki have almost no influence, or no influence. They have almost no interest in history. A little bit history and politics and stuff like that. Zane later in life became interested in politics, and he's campaigned for a couple of seats up in Northwest Arkansas. His sister never has. She never really has done much of it. She reads history when she's interested in it and moves on. Mostly she has other interests. But if I was to be a betting man, and I would win this bet, I know, Jen, it's been a while since you've joined us, but Davis early on, of the four of us, had this crazy intellectual curiosity about all things. So Zane, as the oldest, had his own room, and sister Nikki, as the youngest and the only girl, had her own room, and Davis and I shared a room. We shared a room from the point of my memory up until I was 15 or 16, and he left home about a year, right around in there. And the only time we didn't share a room was when I was I got a closet. They cleaned out the hall closet for me at Fort Campbell and let me move into the closet. So I got to live there for a year. That was cool. But early on, Davis had this crazy intellectual curiosity about all things. And I remember when we were kids, he got into reading stuff. He got into listening to classical music very young. He got me into listening to classical music, and he got into... I don't necessarily remember him reading a lot of history or anthropology, and that's technically he's not an archaeologist, he's an anthropologist. But he certainly had all of this interest. By the time he was in high school, he was reading lots and arguing politics and all this stuff. And I think by being in the room with him, it kind of bled over. It just I absorbed a lot of what he got me into comic books. He got me into Dungeons and Dragons. He got me into all kinds of stuff. The only place we veered drastically differently was he just loved Conan the Barbarian. He read all things Robert E. Howard. I didn't care for Robert E. Howard that much. I was a Burroughs guy. I loved all things Tarzan and Barsoom. So we went in a little bit different directions there. But I remember you wanted personal. Here's a pretty personal. Here's a personal moment in my life. Now, I don't know how old I'm going to be. It's going to be when Anwar Sadat is assassinated in Egypt. He's the prime minister or president of Egypt and was assassinated. I want to say that's 1980 or 81, right around in there. And I made some joke, not knowing I was 12 or 13 or whatever. I made some joke. I didn't care, whatever. And then Davis turned to me and he said, no, this is really serious. Anwar Sadat is one of our closest allies, and it's one of our only allies in the region, aside from Israel. And it was kind of this course correction for me. At that moment, I remember that moment. I remember where we were standing and where Davis was standing. It was really just the two of us. My dad was there, but he didn't say anything. That was kind of a course correction for me, and that's when I began kind of becoming a news junkie. I wanted to know. Suddenly, I think, opened up in my mind, suddenly that I was living in a country that was part of a bigger picture of things or something. I don't know, whatever it was. But I got really interested in politics at that point. And I shouldn't say politics. That's not correct at all. I got interested in news and reading about stuff. Now, couple that with two strange things that I did as a child. I read, the first book I ever read was The Early Bird Gets the Worm. You can see it. It's probably on eBay. Fantastic book about an early bird who pulls a worm out. He gets it first, but they become friends or something like that. And then after that, I've become a John Carter guy and then a Tarzan guy. But somewhere in the midst of all of that, on this heroic fantasy and this fiction, I started reading biographies on the Apache Geronimo and Robert E. Lee. Now, I don't know why those two stand out. I remember checking out a number of books on those two individuals from both the school and local libraries and reading them, and I just kind of devoured anything I could get on Geronimo and on Robert E. Lee. I don't really know why, but that kind of created this basis for me for an interest in, I don't know, maybe the underdog. I have no idea. I have no idea why Robert E. Lee and why Geronimo. I don't know. I think probably because both were exceptionally good war commanders and led, against impossible odds. So that kind of, all of that little bit background there and whatnot, kind of coupled with the death of Anwar Sadat, propelled me into this kind of news junkie, and I became this news junkie and just started devouring stuff. And somewhere, I would read this and read that, a little bit of history here and there. And then when I got into college, I took a class, World Civ, and my professor was fantastic, and I just plunged into it. And I stopped actually. In those days, I began to phase fiction out of my reading and started just reading anything voraciously I could get on whatever interested me. And Davis, on his part, I think that his intellectual curiosity, if I remember correctly, he had this great love of dinosaurs. When we were little bitty, he absolutely loved dinosaurs. And so there would be cowboys and Indians and Civil War Army men all over my side of the room, and then World War II and dinosaur stuff on Davis's side of the room. You actually can see, if you can find these on the net occasionally. I'm going to move them to my office eventually. There are these two mountain sets. They're going to be, and some of you have played with these. They're about this tall, came out in the 70s, Mark's Toys. And it's going to be two mountains with these kind of bridges between them. They were the same mountains. One was light tan, the other one was green. The green one was a dinosaur one, caveman one, and then the light tan one was a Native American cowboy one. I had the cowboy one, and Davis had the dinosaur one. But I think that love of dinosaurs for Davis led him down to that path to try to understand what killed the dinosaurs, where they came from, and I suspect that's why he began reading stuff like, I remember really early on, he was reading Darwin, he was reading, political tracts, he was reading all kinds of stuff, anything to get his hands on, really, and just kind of read it. That stuff bled into his D&D game in a huge, huge way. And I think that natural curiosity for dinosaurs and for just understanding biology and all that crap that goes with it led him into anthropology. I don't know what triggered him into anthropology off of archaeology. That I don't know. I know that he made me read 3 books and I can't remember the titles of all of them, but they're written by an actual science fiction writer, and one's called The Territorial Imperative. And I strongly recommend that everybody read The Territorial Imperative. Whether you agree with it or not, it's not the point. The point is, it's a huge exercise in opening your mind to kind of understanding the way animals and Homo sapiens and other primates and nations and groups and bands and tribes and all these things interact. The Territorial Imperative, strongly recommend you read it. And there's 3 in the series. I can't remember the other 2. They're on my shelf in there. But he gave those. I mean, he made me read those. I remember he said, you absolutely have to read these books. And I did. And that kind of set me off on the same kind of path that he went in kind of trying to understand the origins of man and early societies and all this other stuff. And that just played into the history. And then the cool thing is about Davis and I, we've always, and I suspect it's because we shared a room for so long, we got along really well. I remember having 2 fights with Davis my entire life, and we just got along well. And he was really the lead in all of this. He kind of opened my mind to all kinds of stuff. And I don't want to say that he sat there and lectured me. I'm sure he did. I don't remember any of that, but because I was in the room with him, and he and I were sitting there, and it's bedtime, and he's read something, and I'm the one that he's going to tell. So that's the way that goes. When you're the little brother, you listen to the older brother. And when he went to college, he just goes off scale on it. I mean, he's reading everything he can get his hands on. He stopped reading maybe 10 years ago. I don't know. I think when he had 4 kids, and that kind of consumed everything, and he couldn't get much reading in at all. But he texted me about 6 months ago. He goes, Kent, that's my middle name is Kent. He said, Kent, I'm going to start reading again, because it was always so funny. But yeah, he is, Jennifer. If you talk to Davis, Davis and I are funny. We're kind of, and you can see it in Aird and in Zaya, we're kind of yin and yang, I don't know, optimist, pessimist. He will take a concept. I try to keep kind of the nuts and bolts of a concept, at least in my head. I'm not a big fan of philosophy. I'm not a big fan of kind of extrapolating out a bigger, picture. I shouldn't say that's not true. It's more a philosophical picture. And Davis will take it in a nanosecond in that direction and begin dissecting it. He's a blast to talk to. I love talking to Davis. We talk every day. I mean, and nothing's much changed in that. But he's just crazy smart, and he's just crazy distracted with with 4 little bitty children. And wait till the NPC Almanac comes out. I've been reading chunks of it. It's absolutely astounding. He's got so much stuff in there. You're gonna love it. Which of you is the "hey kids, get off my lawn" guy? Well, that would be me. That's not really true. I don't care if anyone's on my lawn, but I do like to take care of my lawn. I'm a huge fan of it. Davis doesn't. So here's a perfect example of Davis and I, kind of the way we look at things. When I read a book, wish I had right now I'm reading a book on the Great African War of 1996 to 2006, the whole Rwanda conquest of Zaire/Congo. But if I had it, but when I hold a book, I won't even, I don't break the binding. When I read, I'm very, very careful. So here's the Home of the Unclean. I read like this. I won't ever break the binding back. I don't ever do anything like that. I don't make markings in a book. I don't. I use a dollar bill because it's so thin as a bookmark, because I don't want to bend the pages or mess the binding up or anything like that. Davis is not that way at all. Davis will take a book. He will immediately break it. He immediately breaks the binding, and then he has a pen usually with him, and he's making notes as he goes through. He's circling things. He's doing all kinds of stuff. So when he's done with the book, it's filled with information that wasn't there before, but it's not in the shape that it was before. He's always funny. You can always tell Davis's stuff and my stuff. Yes, there you go. Yes, Davis is that way, and he's the same way with stuff. If he's mowing the yard and he's done mowing, he just walks away from the mower. He's done. He might put it up. Sometimes he does. But I put everything back up. I don't want to see anything that I'm not using. I want it all put away, cleaned, put away. So we've kind of, and I've gotten a little weird with that, and he's gotten a little weird the other direction. But so as much as we get along, that's kind of the yin and the yang of us, I guess. But idiots, I cannot imagine you facing me. Yeah, King Guthar, you would hate it. I will rarely lend Davis a book, and when I do, I will tell him, do not destroy my book. But if you get into his books, it's just funnier than crap, because he's got boxes and boxes and boxes of them, which is another thing. I don't leave books boxed up. They come out of the boxes. Davis has them they're just wherever he can get to them. It's just so funny, and he doesn't care about any of it. What's important to Davis is the information in the book. It's the words. He does it. It's just paper. It's just paper. You can go get another one. And now it's just digital, right? It's just little things of light or something. Absolutely disgusting. Yeah, see, there you go, Geek Preacher. That's a good idea. So you can put all that stuff in. Thank you for the subscription, Epi. Very, very cool. Always try to keep I do too, Great Peg. So it's just funny. It's just funny. Now, we'll tell you that two funny things, the two fights that Davis and I had. Now, I don't know how old we were. It was before I had my own closet. It was before I came out of the closet. It was I must have been 12 or something, and we shared a room, of course, and we got into a row over something, and we did the Three's Company thing where you tape the room off, and how's it going, Lord Gazumba? You tape the room off, and I got the room with most of the toys in the closet. He, however, got the side of the room with the door, so I couldn't actually exit the room. I was the loser in that battle, and I do remember having a fisticuffs with him. We went at it one day, and he was Davis. You've met him. He's very strong. He's extremely much stronger than I am. And I remember he literally did that classic thing where he put his hand on my forehead, and I couldn't reach him. It was so funny. It was just great. So those were the two fights that Davis and I have had. Otherwise, we've gotten along since birth, so far as I know. Steve came out of a literal closet. I lived in a closet for about a year. That was my thing. My parents finally gave me my own room, but it was the hall closet. It had shelving units. So you go through the door, and it had shelving units all the way around it, and I put all my crap up on the shelves. And I had a trundle bed that you could elevate, and then I'd lay on the trundle bed. And if someone woke me up really fast, if I sat up too fast, I'd whack my head into the shelf above the trundle bed. It was really funny. I had a little record player in there. It was cool. It was a cool little room. It's probably why I like small, cozy spaces. People, see, what do we got coming up? I'm so disappointed when people treat books badly. A friend of mine went on a holiday with her sister and bought a book I recommended. When she came back, the book was literally destroyed. I asked what had happened, and apparently her sister wanted to read the same book. So when she got halfway through, they tore the book in half so her sister could read the first half. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. But I could see Davis doing that, especially paperbacks. Now, if it's an old antique book, he's very careful with it. He really doesn't like that type of book. He really wants paperbacks. I don't like paperbacks. You go into my library in there, I've got about 5,000 books, and they're I would say, 4,000 of them are hardcover, easy. But Davis doesn't like hardcover books. He wants paperbacks because they're lighter, and he can stick them in his backpack, and he can put them wherever he needs them to go, and he can tear them to pieces, and it's no big deal. Yeah, I know what it's like to live in a tiny home. That tiny closet was it was funny, but I did get my own. I got my own room, my own space, which is kind of cool. But it ended, I moved back in with Davis after that. I don't know why it ended. I think it was just too tight. Or my dad wanted the closet back. Wanted to put some crap in there, and he said, get out. That probably is how it played out. Retro Gamer, yes. I am waiting, actually, for price quotes. I got a hold of you. We talked like 2 weeks ago or a week ago or something, or you posted on Facebook or something. And I immediately that night shot the guy an email, and they're getting me price quotes. I need to actually follow up. That was last week, wasn't it? I think. So I need to follow up and make sure they've still got my number, or I didn't accidentally delete it, or it's blocked by my spam, because I've been pretty ferocious with spam lately. I'm blocking everything that's coming through. But Hopefully I should have a quote soon, and as soon as we get it, I'm going to place an order, and it's in Canada. I don't know how long it'll take. It probably a couple of weeks to manufacture and a couple of weeks to ship and get down here would be my guess. I'm not sure how all that. I haven't ordered anything from Canada in a month of Sundays, so I'm not sure how long it's going to take to work all that out, but... Fire away, Geek Preacher, solo adventures. I'm seeing online there's quite a demand for these, especially younger gamers. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, especially with the lockdown, quarantine, whatever you call it. A lot of people, you know, are kind of stuck at home and bored. And if you don't have a GM or DM or a CK or whatever it is, you're kind of in a tough spot, you know. And we've talked to Jim Ward quite a bit about that. He's pitched a huge number of those things to us. I need to get a hold of him again. He's very good. He's very skilled at that. Yes, we have. And I think I'll actually holler at Jim. He was talking the other day about any projects we have coming up, and that one would be a very, very cool one. Thanks for... In fact, I'm going to make a note of that. Thanks, Geek Preacher. Much appreciated. I'm just going to make a note of screens, follow up, and... I'm just going to put one shot. I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm an idiot. We really are looking to expand the line too into all kinds of stuff. It's been a crazy busy 3 years, really 4 years. We've just been picking up, but that'd be a very nice addition. Very cool call, Geek Preacher. Who would win in a fight, Tarzan or Conan? The battlefield is the wastes of Barsoom, and the effects of thin atmosphere and low gravity apply. Both are minimally equipped. Conan has a steel cap and an iron short sword, sandals, and a leather jerkin. Tarzan has a loincloth, 2 stone daggers, and a fire-hardened spear. The weather is hot and clear, and John Carter is unaware of their presence on his planet. Yeah, I think John Carter would kill both of them because he's so skilled on Barsoom. You know, I don't know. If you gave Tarzan a rope, he was always hanging things. You know, he killed many a lion by dropping a rope, a noose around its neck, and hanging it. Tarzan. The thing about Tarzan, and I think Hollywood certainly never captured this, and I think this is one of the reasons I loved Tarzan. Dude, I don't use computers for that stuff. That's crazy. I have my handy-dandy notepad. Yeah, Tarzan is not... Yeah, so long as he's not the Saturday morning Tarzan, for sure. I can't remember what book it is, but one of the many times Jane is spirited away. I think it's like 13 or 14. And there's these people that live in these caves or whatever. And Tarzan, he sneaks into them, and they have some kind of ancient religion. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. And he sneaks into a priest's room, and the priest is sleeping. And Tarzan strangles him in his sleep and kills him, puts on his priestly garbs, and then goes to rescue Jane. And I remember reading that a few years back, and I thought, good Lord, Tarzan just murdered that guy. There was no fair fight. This wasn't on guard or stand your ground. He just strangled the dude in his sleep and moved on. Which is actually one of the things I think that always appealed to me about Tarzan. Not that he's a murderer, but he's just primordial. There's this primeval thing in Tarzan that Burroughs never loses. He doesn't civilize. He doesn't. I mean, he takes on the vestiges of civilization, but he doesn't become that. He is literally the animal. I've always said one of the things I like to say to people that are huge environmentalists and nature lovers and all of these things, and that's wonderful, but you got to keep in mind that Homo sapiens are really the only animals concerned about the environment. Nothing else is concerned about it. A lion laying there looking at the last zebra on the Serengeti isn't going to think to himself, I need to preserve that species. It's going to eat that zebra and move on and not think about it again. That's kind of the way, nature's brutal. And it's not evil. It's not bad. It's not any of these things. I mean, when a storm comes in, the storm doesn't stop. There's no higher order. It's just a storm, and you're going to live or drown, whatever. And that's sort of what Tarzan is. He's that primordial force. He's that part of Homo sapiens that we have worked so very hard to bury within ourselves, but that I believe are still there. I mean, you can see it every day. It plays out all the time in the news. And so that's kind of what Tarzan is for me, not the murdering guy who killed the guy in his sleep. Conan's a little different, because Conan he has that vestiges of order about him, of using weapons, of command, of following a commander, of that type of thing, and there's nothing like that in Tarzan's makeup. The only ones who win are those who are most fit to survive. But Conan certainly has that, of course. Yeah, I don't know. I would have to put on Barsoom. I think I'd put my money on Tarzan, but I always kind of lean towards Tarzan anyway. So maybe not huge. I'm just a huge fan of Tarzan. Do what you have to do to win. Yeah, I mean that's the Tarzan thing, but the thing is about Tarzan. There's no kind of thought process. There's no Judeo-Christian belief system, underlying it, saying that murder is bad or killing is. He wins. That's what he does. Conan at least has a religious belief behind him. Now that's not to say that Tarzan doesn't have a code or what have you, but he sort of just, if it's in his way and it's opposing him, he kills it. Conan, on the other hand, at least has got the vestiges of civilization about him. So with that in mind, give him a rope. I think Tarzan might win because he's just always hanging everything. He just kills lions. And I'm a huge animal lover, and every time I turn on, Tarzan's killing some lion just for the fun of it. It's crazy. Nature's brutal but not evil. Preach. And humanity is nature's answer to the brutality of what it births. Humanity is different, We've become aware of what we are. We're the only that I know of. We're the only species that is aware. Perhaps Neanderthals were. Maybe some of our other primates are vaguely aware of what we are, of what we're capable of. But we know that animals war on each other. We're not. That's nothing unique to humanity. But yeah, humanity is interesting. That goes back to that book. I would strongly recommend everybody read it. Territorial Imperative. The Territorial Imperative. Fantastic book. Did you already stream the winning item description of Leomine's pouch? Are we doing it? I don't know if we're doing a giveaway this time. I'm not sure. But there's nothing for him to climb in the waist. That's true. He's not going to be dropping that noose around Conan's neck. And Conan's not an idiot. He's not going to just let the noose fall around his neck. Yeah, I don't know. Conan can easily break Tarzan's rope. Yeah, he's going to have the sword too, so he's going to get through it. Yeah, I don't know. My gut tells me Tarzan's going to win, but Davis would probably say Conan's going to win. And then Cole is going to come in and kill both of them and move on. Or John Carter is, because John Carter would take both of them, because he's a master swordsman, and he's used to the Barsoomian gobbledygook that's up there. So there you go. Great stuff. Conan could use... Conan's going to have that more than Tarzan does, because Tarzan's more about, go in and kill him. Yeah. The thing about Burroughs, Commander Pete, and I love Burroughs, I'm a huge fan of it. One, you've got to understand it's very dated. It's extraordinarily dated, so just keep that in mind. And I know in today's climate, some people have trouble reading this type of literature. That's okay, whatever gets you through the day, but keep in mind it's dated. And also, Burroughs wrote... You really should read the history of his writing. It's nothing short of miraculous, because he had 412 different jobs. He actually was in the Army during the very, very tail end of the Apache Wars, but he was a salesman. He was all kinds of stuff. And at one point, he was that guy writing those crazy ads in magazines, that's, you can see through walls or whatever. But I can't remember exactly. He was selling ad space or something like that in a magazine, and he was sitting waiting, and he picked up one of those pulp magazines, and he read it, and he's thinking, well, I can do this. And he went home and he belted out John Carter of Mars in a few weeks, and he sent it to the publisher. The publisher loved it and published it. So Burroughs developed very, very early on this kind of this framework under which he wrote, and most of his books follow the same kind of thematic plot line. It's going to be Tarzan or John Carter or I can't remember the Pellucidar character, but whoever it is, and they're going to have their love, and they're going to get separated from them, and there's going to be some other people, and they get separated, and then they go through these crazy adventures, and at the end come back together. That said, I strongly recommend David Eames. There you go. I strongly recommend that you read Tarzan of the Apes. The first book in that series is a fantastic story. It's just a good yarn, and it's very American. It's very kind of post-industrial. You can kind of see all of these thematic things that come out of that time period in the United States' history. It's just a good story. Now, the other ones, of course, take that story and just do different twists on it. But after that, I mean, for Tarzan of the Apes, it's still one of my favorite things to read, even though it's dated. It's a little stilted. I mean, it's written in like 1913 or 14 or whatever, so it's got the language can be a little bit laborious, not terrible, but it's just a good read. After that, the Tarzan books are cool. They're just good yarns. That's all they are. But the first one, I strongly recommend everybody read. Just a good fun read. They would exchange a few blows. John Carter would be right up on his hovercraft to the Tarzan and Conan team up to escape out from under John's nose before they get back to the city. Yeah, then they would all go in separate directions. They'd be all over Barsoom doing crazy stuff, and then in the last 2 pages come back together. That was Burroughs' great gift. He could bring 12 characters together in 2 pages, and it all seemed quite real. So it was very cool. What impresses me the most about Burroughs is that for his time, he made very strong female characters. Yes, sexism and misogyny by today's standards was there, but his female characters had much stronger self-agency than what you'd see in other writings at the time. You know, you're dead on, and I think that Jane certainly does, and Deja Thoris certainly does. These are not women that just, you know, are there for the rescuing at no point, especially Jane. I absolutely love that character. It does drive me crazy that Hollywood won't cast a blonde. She was very, very blonde. She was a blonde. That's what Burroughs wrote her as, but she's never blonde in the damn movies. It drives me crazy. Absolutely drives me crazy. But, yeah, I mean, he did. And there was a little bit of racial overtones, and there were some nationalist overtones. In one of the books, he had the Germans being the bad guys, so much so that the books were pulled from shelves in Germany in the 1920s. So there's things that you just kind of have to adjust to when you're Deanna the Beautiful on the other. Yeah, well, you know, not all of them. But it's one of those things, Geek Preacher, that my daughter and I were talking about the other day. I can't remember what she was reading. She's on her own journey to become a historian, and she's a senior now in college. And I can't remember what we were talking about, but she was talking about the way that women are portrayed, women of the past are portrayed in today's literature and in today's movies as if they had no agency. She actually taught me that word, agency, which is a wonderful word. Yeah, I never saw that one. King Kothar, that's the one. That's the one that I did not see. Oh, that's so funny. Maybe I should. I love Bo Derek, but I didn't want to see Tarzan turn into a semi-skin flick. Really, the only Tarzan movie I've ever thoroughly enjoyed was, Greystoke, or Tarzan Greystoke, no, Tarzan the Legend of Greystoke, from the 80s? Is it the 80s or something? It's a really good movie. You guys, is Andy McDowell in that? I can't remember which one that one is. At any rate, but yeah, so my daughter's learning. She approached me and she said that all of this literature and these movies and the TVs, they portray women of the past as if they had no agency, if they were just there, ornaments on a tree to be moved by men, and it wasn't the case at all. It's just a disservice to countless generations of women, countless generations of women. And I knew some of these women who grew up in the early 1900s. My grandmother Harris was not an ornament. My grandmother Wilson was great-grandmother Harris, and my great-grandmother Wilson. These were not ornaments. These women they ruled large households with an iron fist, and they governed a whole segment of the culture that wouldn't be the way it is today if it wasn't for them. So I hate to see that the agency of women taken completely out of context from the past. It drives me absolutely nuts. And Burroughs, you're right. That's just a Geek Preacher. There certainly was a time. I think that what happened, honestly, and I'm not really up on the broad history of women throughout, but I think that the 50s and the 60s changed things dramatically as the work at home, the governing of the household changed as more technology came in and there was more free time. So for a very short period of time, women who were largely in charge of their households in those days had more time on their hands. But that didn't last any time at all. Certainly not in the picture of our species. It didn't last at all. But it drives me absolutely nuts that women of the past have no agency in today's literature, film, TV, and all that stuff, because it's just not accurate at all. It's just not accurate at all. But at any rate, you're right. I think that Burroughs does a nice job for the most part of doing that. You are going to have to get used to weak people get killed quickly or slowly. And it's not. I don't remember Burroughs being. It's not peopled with evil people. Just unless you consider greed evil, so just greedy people or something like that. I love Burroughs. I absolutely love it. I was reading Tarzan last night, and he stole the treasure from the mutineers and put it in the ape amphitheater with using a shovel and explaining the use of a shovel, explaining how it hurt his feet. But he dug up the treasure, moved it, and buried it again. That's awesome. What book is that from? That's not the first one. Or is that the first one? Because he moves the treasure in the first one after Jane's crew. Man, it's been a couple of years since I read that. I usually read, first book. I usually read Tarzan of the Apes once every 4 or 5 years. I got a really nice hardback version in there. And that's one of the things... that's one of the things, Ultra Magnus, that Burroughs does, and this is what I was alluding to earlier. He'll take 12 streams, break them all apart, and weave them together in the last 10 pages, and you're like, how did that happen? Women had to work and got into the workplace. Some preferred it over managing a home. They certainly did. Well, certainly society changed, and that's the thing. When you look at the way the home changed, like I was talking to my mother, and to actually do laundry back in the 1940s, they had to take a whole day and to do the laundry. To make bread, Monday was bread day. They spent the entire day making bread for the 5 sons, a daughter, themselves, and whatever. And this is real work. I mean, the idea that this isn't work is absolutely maddening to me. It's insane. Unless you have done it, you have no idea. And it's insanely vital work. And when you're talking communities that are rural, there's no difference. There's no difference between milking the cow and making bread, right? There's none. So, and if you're out harvesting wheat or if you're turning it into something that's edible, these are jobs that have to be done. And this is why, if you read your history, and you're reading particularly in the settlement period of the United States, Canada, and Australia, and probably New Zealand as well, when a spouse died, and my family is absolutely filled with this, when a spouse died, the surviving spouse remarried someone very quickly, because being on the frontier, being in a rural environment, these were not jobs you could do alone, not well. And so the whole idea that women didn't play this insanely key part in the development of our society and our culture, all of this it's maddening to me, and it's erroneous completely. Now this changes when technology changes things. With the invention of the refrigerator, the icebox, the refrigerator, the washing machines, the dishwashers, microwaves, all of this stuff changes stuff so quickly, so that one part of that, for a very, very brief period, for like 10 or 12 years, one part of that found themselves, and this was females, found themselves by and large without a defined role. It didn't last long, because by the 70s, that's changing. And of course, like you said, Jennifer, in the 1940s, it had already, the impetus had already been put there when so many women went into the workplace because they had to. They had to leave the home and go into the workplace, and to whatever ramifications that had in the rural environments and even city environments, blah, blah, blah. So the 1950s and the early 1960s is this very brief period where women's role is undefined. And I think that Hollywood and many literati have attached to that as if it was women's role from the days of in ancient Babylon all the way to today, and it's just horribly inaccurate, and it's a horrible disservice to women for gazoobies of generations. Absolutely. I don't know what a gazoobie is. It's a lot of generations. It's a whole lot of numbers put together. So it drives me absolutely nuts. Well, that was a tangent. I went way off on a tangent there. How's it going? Haunted Holler? Yeah, the South has always been about 50 years behind everywhere else. It's just what we do. It's just too hot, man. It's too hot to be doing that stuff. I think the last part of Arkansas to get electricity was in like 1977. So there was parts of Arkansas that did not have electricity in the 70s. How cool is that? A woman in ancient Rome, when she ran a household, was running a business. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny, my mom told me that when she was young in the 40s, she took home ec. It was a required class, and it was nothing like baking. It wasn't baking. It wasn't doing what home ec became by the 70s and 80s. It was home economics. She said we learned how to balance the checkbook. We learned how to shop and buy things intelligently by weight or by price or by whatever. It was actually how to run a business, which is the home. And if you look, and I've got them, I'll put them up someday. I've got the ledgers from my great-grandfather, Harris. I have their ledgers, their financial ledgers from when they lived and the stuff that they bought and how they managed their money. And that was Grandma Harris. That was her role. So it drives me nuts. At what point does Tarzan become outright fantasy fiction instead of period fiction with a strongly defined premise? Early on, really, book 4 or 5. The first Tarzan book I ever read was The Jewels of Opar, which was book 5. And then I went back and read the other ones. After book 8, which I think is the Roman one, it really goes into it's just fantasy fiction. The Return of Tarzan's pretty good. That's the one I read the other day. I read The Return of Tarzan not very long ago. But yeah, the first book is the one you want to read. After book 8, they're cool. They're enjoyable. You know, if you got a couple of days, they're all short as hell, 125 pages. Just go read one. But they're all kind of the same thing. Lost civilization, whether it's a Roman or a Greek or whatever, primordial, whatever it is. It's good stuff, though. Yeah, that is exactly why they had loads of kids. They had households that had to be run. Not until a society gains a certain level of wealth do people stop having children. And in fact, I think Gen X is the first generation in American history that the number of children born is less. People don't understand it, people don't read it, but America's population, if you take immigration out, America's population is on the decline. It's been that way for a while, and it's because the average Gen Xer and millennial and, well, now the Zoomers, I guess, are getting into it, are having less than 2 children per household. So if you have a mom and a dad, or a mom and a mom or a dad, and whatever, and you have 2 children, then you have no population growth. And most of them, it's like 1.8 or 1.7. Italy's is worse at 1.2. So without immigration, the United States would actually be on a population decline. Most of the world is on a population decline. People don't quite understand that. Very few countries have huge explosive population growth. We're just going to, there's so many of us, we're going to see an increase to about 8 to 9 billion before it begins to top off. But we hit that wealth zone. We hit that wealth zone in the 70s and the 80s. That many kids were not necessary. I don't know where the boomers fall on that. The boomer generation, and I mean the actual boomer generation, not what the Zoomers are calling the boomer generation, which is everybody that came before them, little upstarts. I'm not sure where the boomer generation falls. I'll bet you their birth rate's less than 2 per household. I will bet you. The house of the household and the cost of children is part of the cutback as well. Absolutely, it is. And the necessity. When you have a farm, you need more hands on deck to run that farm. If you've got 100 acres, it's a damn lot of work. And so you need 4 or 5 children out there, doing all this stuff. And then when they bring in whatever it is, they got to do whatever it is they do, grind it. I don't know, whatever they do with wheat. They do something with it. But yeah, absolutely. And we're there. The West has been there for a while. China forced itself into it. The East is sliding into it as well. It's only in certain sections. I think Nigeria. There's only like 5 or 6 countries that actually have population growth. Yeah, it is. Commander Pete, it's been that way for a while. Despite all of the media constantly and Star Trek and whoever else telling us that there's gazillions. It's not that way. Wealth always. We saw in the Roman Empire, we saw in the Greek city-states. Anytime a society gains a certain level of wealth, and France is a perfect example. I did a demographic study of France years ago. If you look at France and her demographics, they capped after the Napoleonic Wars. It's one reason that they got defeated in the Franco-Prussian Wars. They couldn't feel, and definitely in World War I, is Germany had outstripped them just in manpower. I mean, we talk about Germany fought in World War I, France, Russia, and England, and later the United States, but Germany outnumbered France by like 20 or 25%, and these were younger people, so they could field bigger armies than France could. France demographics had been on the run, decline for a long, long time, and without immigration for all of these countries, all of them will be on a population dip. So we might not see it. I don't know, what do we got? 40 years left, 30, 40 years. We won't see it. I think we'll see it cap out about 8.5 billion, maybe 9 billion. And then it's going to start very, very rapidly declining, because as people die off, the older generations die off, unless they go all putting our buckets in a head, or putting our heads in a bucket, like in what is it, Fry? What is the cartoon? Damn it! It's a cartoon with Fry, the Simpsons type cartoon, where they got everybody's head in the bucket. Yeah, we're going to see a population decline without a doubt. Let's see, what did I miss in here? Let me start quoting some Marcus Aurelius, Man of Leisure. Absolutely. Japan has been declining for decades. The government is concerned that young people aren't going out and having sex. King Cawthron, it's actually, if you look at Japan is a very interesting study of what's happening to the way we've built a lot of societies. You've got entire districts in Japan. They've had a net population loss of 250,000 every year for the past 5 or 6 years. And it's having devastating consequences in certain areas where the tax revenues are declining to nothing, but the population is aging, so the expenses are going up and tax revenues dropping. It's a serious problem in Japan, and it's going to be a serious problem in Italy. They're up next. They've got a horribly low birth rate. Germany's not far behind. The United States is not. The United States' biggest advantage is we've got just open borders. We don't have any kind of coherent immigration policy, so we've got a huge swaths of people coming in across the borders. Some other countries, I think Germany's done a little bit of that. But yeah, it's very interesting. What are they saying? World population cap at 9.7 billion in 2064 and then start declining. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I know that all the doomsayers have been saying for years and years that we're gonna overpopulate and we'll never be able to feed everybody and blah 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 blah. And this is just not the case. In fact, the more population we have, the more food we've got. It's absolutely nuts. But yeah, the population stuff's it's one of the reasons that anything that you read on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, you should just go away. Just don't read any of it. It's all just gobbledygook. You got to go somewhere else where I don't know where that is, but where there's actual information. Yeah, I'm with you for a wonder. We're all gonna be dead. What do we care? Unless it's after 5. Unless they put our heads in those buckets from that show that Fry is in. What is that cartoon called? Futurama. There you go. King Cawthron put it up. Yeah, unless they Futurama us up and put us into buckets. There you go. I don't know if I'd want to live in a bucket. I kind of like walking around. So, see, I think most of us won't have a problem. Yeah, but our children and their children, it'll be it's probably the only thing that I that I regret in being mortal. I want to know, mainly because of the history that I read, I want to know how the story ends, right? How does this all end? What's the end game? Is it going to be like Michael Moorcock's Dancers at the End of Time, where there's only, a couple of hundred of Homo sapiens left that live forever and that are addicted to drugs and to pleasure and have no consequence? Or is it going to be more like the apocalypse of The Walking Dead? I don't know. Probably somewhere in the middle would be my guess. That's usually how that goes out. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, there's interesting studies out there. I definitely I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not one of those that they all die. It was an experiment where a scientist set up a utopia for rats. Well, that's the argument, isn't it? Without struggle, that goes back to that territorial imperative. Without struggle, there's no reason, and without reason, there's no drive, and without drive, there's just decay. And what is that word? I like that word that means you have no drive. It's not impotence. That means you have no sex drive. I can't remember. I just used it today in a damn sentence. Bloody heck. I don't like it. Whatever it is. It's something. No, it could not. I don't think it could. I think utopia would be absolutely. Now I want to know what that word is. So I'm going to have to go to the file. It was in Gaxmore. I did a mountain of work on Gaxmore today. So let me see. 5th edition. Gaxmore. Content industry. This is going to be in this one right here. Opulence. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think that's the word that I'm looking for. That means lack of curiosity is right. Indolence, not opulence. No, indolence. That's the word that I was looking for. Indolence. That's the word of the day. So what comes first, the robots or the apes? Man, I need to read Planet of the Apes. That's what I need to read. We die off as we become advanced enough to negate the evolutionary process, and something else comes along better adapted to whatever environment we live in. Conflict ensues and we die off. The ecological scene of the planet continues to evolve, and ultimately the sun dies out after several quadrillion years pass, and then the heat death of the universe occurs. So, King Kothar, if I'm going to be a betting man, I'm going to put my money on either the raccoon or the octopus. Man, those guys are smart. Both of them, they can open bottles and stuff. They're crazy smart. And they got something similar to that. So, that's where we're headed to. What is that, the comic book, Commandy? We're headed to Commandy. The octopus. Yeah, so King Preacher, he's with me there, going with the octopus on that one. They are crazy smart. And they can do stuff, right? That's the important thing. They're smart, and they can do stuff. They got, well, tentacles, I suppose, is what they got. So everybody's Commandy. Everybody's going for the octopus on that one. Man, what up with the raccoon? He's pretty good. He's pretty smart. Pretty aggressive. I did see that. I gotta go, but I did see that video where that octopus was crawling across the land. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Apes strong together. There you go. There you go. Millennium. All right, Far Wander took a jab at him. We do live. Yeah, it was indolence. We do live in a time though where there's so much wealth, and I think honestly we're there even with all the problems that many people have. And society in general is just so much, and it's causing confusion. It's causing, as Sir Topham Hatt would say from Thomas the Train, it's causing confusion and delay. with that, it is. We are a little bit past. We are a little bit past the time here. I absolutely love today's discussion. I could go on and on about this stuff all day. Great subjects. Thanks everybody for showing up, and thanks for this fantastic conversation. This is the way it all should be. Just nice and funny. Just we all get along. And it's one of the greatest minds in modern literature, Sir Topham Hatt. Absolutely. I love Sir Topham Hatt. He keeps the trains running on time. And he's unflappable. Everything that goes wrong with those trains, unflappable. Sir Topham Hatt shows up and he fixes it. Or has someone fix it. Not really. He doesn't really do it. Absolutely love Sir Topham Hatt. All right. Absolutely, Geek Preacher. The fat controller laughs. There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up. I sure appreciate it. I'll be back on Thursday. 4 o'clock on Thursday for something or the other. The trade, the Jim's Tricks of the Trade thing. And I believe we've got Haunted Holler painting tomorrow at some point. I don't know the time. Check the schedule. Everything's on the schedule. I'm off to eat some kind of stir fry, I think, or meatloaf. I think I'm going to have leftover meatloaf. But thanks. And thanks, Jennifer, getting me started tonight on the whole Davis thing. Davis and I are very close, and it's great to kind of cast out and let people know, to remind people, though they see me more often than Davis. He's a huge influence on all of this. I mean, every bit of this. But thanks. Thank you, Ultra Magnus and King Kothar. Thanks, Jennifer, again. And Tim and Chuck and everybody. And we will sign off now and off to find the meatloaf. You all have a great and a wonderful rest of your evening.